CCTV footage has revealed the last known movements of missing mother Gaynor Lord. Gaynor left her job at a department store in Norwich at 2.
In 1990, a young boy in Mexico was watching cartoons around midnight when the broadcast was interrupted by a slideshow of nearby missing people. One in particular stuck out. Her name was Celine Delgado Lopez, and
we're going to start off the list with the Springfield III. So it's June of 1992, and two friends, Stacy McCall and Susie Streeter, have just graduated high school. They go to their graduation party and leave at around 2:15 a.m. Their plan is to spend the night at another friend's place, Jane Kirby, and then go to a water park the next day. But Jane's place was too crowded, so they decided to sleep at Susie's mom's place. The next day, Jane and her boyfriend headed to the water park as planned. They waited around for a bit, but no sign of Susie or Stacy. Eventually, they went over to the house to see what they were up to. They knocked, no answer, knocked again, nothing. They didn't seem to be home, but the door was unlocked and all of their cars were parked outside. A few hours go by and then Stacy's mom, Janice, comes over to investigate. They all entered the home to discover that, there was nobody home. Even stranger than their cars still being outside, though all of their purses were still home. Even Susie and her mom Cheryl's cigarettes were still there. On top of that, there was no sign of a struggle. It was as if they just vanished into thin air. And with no leads, there wasn't much anyone could do but aimlessly search around. Until this day, the case is still a complete mystery. Next up, we have the case of Russell and Shirley Dermond. Russell and Shirley were an elderly couple living in Putnam County, Georgia. They lived in a very quiet, safe neighborhood. Nothing bad ever happened there. But sometime between May 1st of 2014, when they were last known to be alive, and May 4th, when they failed to show up to an event they'd planned to attend with their neighbors, the couple met a grisly end. One neighbor, growing concerned, decided to check on them. He knocked on their door and got no answer, but the door was unlocked. He eventually made a horrific discovery. Russell's decapitated body was lying in the garage, but Shirley was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until 10 days later that Shirley's body was found in a lake about 5 miles from the home. She'd suffered blunt force trauma to the head, and sadly the case was a total dead end. There were no witnesses, no evidence of a motive behind the attack, let alone a suspect, so the case remains unsolved to this day. Russell's head hasn't even been found. And we're starting things off with the triangular object. This is a piece of recent UFO footage, or UAP, I guess they're often referred to now. The clip was shared to TikTok and YouTube by TR3B. The footage was taken in the Isle of Wight in England. The camera person hurries outside and starts filming, obviously having seen the object before the camera started rolling. And when they point it up at the sky, we clearly see something. It's triangular with 3 bright glowing lights on each corner. It hovers in the sky, slowly rotating. According to the uploader, the object took off after the camera stopped rolling. It's definitely an intriguing piece of footage. I like how clear it is, but what do you all think? Was it just a drone, a hoax, or a genuine unidentified flying object? Let us know down below. And if you are enjoying this channel, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We got lots more coming your way. Number 9, the Nessie Photos. The Loch Ness Monster's been talked about to death, and for a lot of folks it's almost become a bit of a joke at this point, but there was actually a considerable amount of Nessie activity this year. Back in August, a photographer by the name of Chai Kelly shared images of a serpentine-looking creature in the loch. She'd actually taken the pictures back in 2018, but hadn't shared them publicly until this year. Kelly and her husband had been having lunch at the Dord's Inn on the banks of the loch when they spotted something strange maneuvering through the water. It was about 200 meters off the shore, moving right to left at a steady clip. Kelly stated that at first she thought it may have been a pair of otters or a seal, but that it never came up for air. They never saw the thing's head, so that's pretty strange. Alright, we're not done with the Loch Ness Monster though. Like I said, lots of news about Nessie in 2023. Again, back in August, the Loch Ness Center, which I didn't know existed, and the Loch Ness Exploration Group, who I also didn't know were a thing, set out to conduct the largest hunt for the creature in over 50 years. Drones fitted with infrared cameras were flown over the loch, and hydrophones were used to detect any strange sounds from the murky depths. Hundreds of volunteers also watched from land, attempting to spot any unusual activity in the water. The Loch Ness general manager Paul Nixon talked about the big search, saying it was not just a PR stunt. He also stated that there had been some interesting findings presented to him recently, mostly from sonar contacts showing mysterious objects in the depths of the loch, one of which was, quote, the size of a transit van, which has yet to be explained. Next up on the list we have the orb, another piece of UAP footage, and not the last on the list. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of alien talk on here, so be prepared for that. The footage was released by the AARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is an office within the US Secretary of Defense dedicated to unidentified flying objects, or UAPs. This clip is from about 8 months back during a Senate hearing. The video was recorded by an MQ-9 Reaper drone and shows what looks to be an orb flying through the air. It moves at a good clip, and it's very smooth too. The AARO has stated that they don't know what the object was, and that it is a genuine UAP, but they have seen others like it before. Pretty cool stuff. Once again, how do you all weigh in on this one? In at number 6, we have earthquake lights. On September 8th of 2023, a powerful earthquake of magnitude 6.8 struck Morocco. Several houses collapsed and other buildings were reported with structural damage. But where does the mystery part come in? Well, right before the chaos ensued, witnesses reported bright lights flashing in the sky. This isn't the first time lights like this have been reported though. This is a phenomenon known as earthquake lights, but experts still don't know exactly what causes them. So these lights, which appear as flashes or streaks in the sky, are thought to result from the Earth's crustal stress during tectonic plate movements. The theory is that rocks under immense pressure and friction release these electrical charges that then ionize in the air, creating the lights that we see. But again, that's just a theory, and while researchers have correlated these lights with seismic activity, not all earthquakes are accompanied by earthquake lights, and on rare occasions they even occur independently.
First off, we have Angela Hammond. On April 4th, 1991, Angela Hammond vanished while talking to her boyfriend from a payphone. Her boyfriend, Rob Schaefer, said that Angela told him about a suspicious man circling the neighborhood in a green pickup truck. Now the driver then stopped near the payphone and Angela disappeared. Rob told the police that he quickly jumped into his car and drove to where Angela was, and as he was heading there, the green pickup drove past him. He slammed the car into reverse gear and blew its transmission, and he then helplessly watched as the abductor took his girlfriend away. A ransom note that was sent after the kidnapping said, "Hello, no redacted, we know you, you are no redacted, people like you deserve what you get. We know where your foxy daughter is, and she will see us soon. Tell redacted she has our deepest sympathies in our further loss. Goodbye, redacted." Now police believe the suspect had actually been targeting the daughter of a local cop informant and not Angela. Now the informant received the letter on the same night Angela disappeared, and it seems to be an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, but nothing has ever been found about Angela.
Starting off the list today, we have the Tusa Event. I'm sorry if I am pronouncing that wrong, but it was an unexplained 12 megaton explosion as powerful as 12 million tons of TNT, and it occurred near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River in Russia. The event took place on the morning of June 30th in 1908, and the explosion took out an estimated 3 civilians and over 2,150 square kilometers, 500,000 acres of forest area. It was and still is the largest impact event to take place on Earth in recorded history. Hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic weapons set off over Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. Although some people believe that Nikola Tesla, the inventor of the Tesla coil, may have inadvertently caused the explosion while testing out some new technology, others believe that the explosion was caused by a meteor which either collided with the Earth, making the devastation the result of an impact event, or a meteor that exploded at an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers, about 16 to 33,000 feet above the ground. I'm not sure about you guys, but I feel like if the explosion was caused by a meteor, there would have been eyewitness reports confirming the presence of a meteor. But I guess that's just me, because It remains a mystery. Next on the list, the Dyatlov Pass incident. On February 26 of 1959, 2 male hikers were found dead in Dyatlov Pass in the mountains of what is current-day Russia. That's the second Russia mystery on this list. Are they hiding something? I don't know. Anyways, the 2 men had been missing for days before their body was found, and over the months that followed, the bodies of the other 7 hikers who had accompanied the men on their journey were also found. Here's the thing. The bodies were found with signs of blunt force trauma, 3rd-degree burns, and missing appendages. Not only that, but when authorities tested the deceased hikers' clothes, they found them to be radioactive. So, how did a leisurely hike turn into 9 dead men with some of the world's strangest autopsies? No one actually knows, or if they do, they aren't telling. When authorities canvassed the area, they found the men's tent, which was ripped open from the inside, shoe prints, sock prints, and bare footprints. And hypothermia was ruled out by a coroner despite the fact that the first 2 men to be found had died wearing nothing but their underwear. The explanation given by authorities was that the men had most likely suffered from a phenomenon known as infrasound, in which wind creates a hum that vibrates at a frequency that drives people mad. But that still doesn't explain the radioactive clothes. My guess, they saw something they shouldn't have.
And we're gonna kick off the list with the legend of the Hookman. Now, supposedly on Pond Run Road in the village of New Richmond, there once lived a doctor and his wife. They had a son who was mentally disturbed, and these two were ashamed of him and opted to keep him out of the public eye. This meant chaining him up in the basement whenever people were over, or when they just didn't want him in their presence. One night, there was a terrible storm. A bolt of lightning hit their house and a fire started. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found the parents burnt to death, which was the perfect outcome for despicable people like that. But the boy, who had been chained up in the basement at the time, was nowhere to be found, aside from his hand, still chained up to the wall in the basement. So where did he go? Well, legends started to spread that over the years he grew up stalking through the woods, stealing from homes nearby, brandishing a hook for a hand, and brutalizing innocent people, especially young couples. The urban legend of the Hookman is one you see all over the place. This is just Ohio's specific version of the tale. If you're liking our channel so far, by the way, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? You got nothing to lose. It's free. We got awesome videos coming at you on the daily. Alright, next on the list we have Munchkin Land. This urban legend of Munchkin Land, also known as Tiny Town in Cincinnati, Ohio, centers around a peculiar area near Rumpke Landfill. Here, a cluster of small houses and buildings allegedly housed a community of little people. According to local lore, these tiny inhabitants were notorious for hurling rocks at passing cars, attempting to deter any intruders. Numerous tales circulated about unsuspecting individuals who stopped their cars in the vicinity, only to find themselves confronted by enraged little folk armed with rocks and ready to defend their territory. As to where these little people are said to have come from, the legend goes that they were retired circus performers. Now, there actually was a collection of small structures in this area. They've recently been torn down, I believe. But as to why they were there are lots of different stories, including, of course, that they were built by the little retired circus performers. A more likely explanation, though, is that they had been built by a farmer on the land who had decided he wanted to start running hay rides, and that he, built the houses on the property. But I think it's still a bit murky as to how they got there. Number 8, the Peninsula Python. So this incident involved the discovery of a large python in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Peninsula, Ohio in the summer of 1944. The question obviously was, how did this python, native to tropical regions, end up in a park in Ohio? For a while, authorities didn't even think the reports were real, or at least they didn't think people were really seeing what they thought they were seeing. A massive snake stalking the area became something of an urban legend at the time, but turns out that there indeed was a python, and as to how it got there, some believed that it had been a pet released by its owner, others speculated it had escaped from a traveling circus or a private exotic animal collection. It's still a bit of a mystery to this day as to how it really got there. The python was never even found. It likely died during the winter, but some say it's still stalking its way out there. Next on the list, we have the disappearance of Schaefer. In 2006, Schaefer, a medical student at Ohio State University, University completely vanished. On the night of March 31st, Schaefer went out with friends to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar near the campus in Columbus. Surveillance footage captured him entering the bar, but never showed him actually leaving. When his friends realized he was missing, they figured he'd gone home, but he hadn't. And surveillance footage from the bar showed footage of Brian speaking with two women outside the bar just before 2 a.m. His friends had already left at this point. Then he went back inside and that was it. No trace of him after that. And here's the thing, the bar only had one entrance, monitored by surveillance cameras, which didn't record Brian leaving. On top of that, there were no signs of foul play in his apartment. Over the years, there's been lots of speculation as to what happened here, but one theory is that he voluntarily disappeared and is alive, hopefully anyway, living with a new identity. We're going to start off the list with a disturbing and mysterious online game called Sad Satan. So Sad Satan is this creepy game that popped up on the internet in 2015. Now, I haven't played it myself, but I've seen videos of people playing it, and having heard the story behind it, it's definitely one of the creepiest games on the internet. I describe it as haunted. It's all in black and white. You maneuver your character through these strange environments, and these incredibly disturbing images will like intermittently flash on the screen, some of which people say are real images of dead bodies and worse things, if you can imagine that. People who played it felt seriously disturbed by what they saw and heard, but even stranger, nobody knew where the game came from or who made it. At least not the person's real identity, anyway. It's said to have been created by someone on the dark web, going by the name of ZK. One version of the game ended up on a YouTube channel called Obscure Horror Corner, but even then folks weren't sure if it was the real game or some made-up version for views. Till this day, nobody's really cracked the mystery of who's behind Sad Satan.
Next up, we have the mystery of the Jack Fro's emails. In June of 2011, Jack Fro died unexpectedly of a heart attack at the age of 32. His friends and family were shocked, but even more so after they began receiving emails that appeared to be coming from Jack himself 5 months after his death. In particular, Jack's friend Tim Hart received many emails that appeared to be written by Jack. How so? They came from Jack's personal email account and included personal details about the two men's relationship. The first email Tim received simply said, "I'm watching," but then the next email read, "Do you hear me? I'm at your house, clean your effing attic." It was the mention of the attic that really made it clear that whoever or whatever was doing this had to have been listening to one of the final conversations Tim had had with Jack, the second to last time Jack had visited Tim's home before his death. The two had gone up to hang out in Tim's attic, as they often did, and they joked about how dirty it was, and Froze even said that he would clean it himself. Curious, Tim replied to the email, but there was no response. In another instance, Jack sent an email to his cousin, Jimmy McCraw, saying, "Hey Jim, how you doing? I knew you would break your ankle. Tried to warn you." Unlike the attic comment that took place during Jack's life and was kind of like an inside joke that only those two would know about, Jimmy broke his ankle long after his cousin's death. So how did he know that? How did the email get to these men from Jack's account, including these kind of personal informations? I don't know, you guys. Do you have any theories?
Next we have the most mysterious song on the internet. So this is a song I was listening to actually a lot last summer when I first found out about this story. It's pretty catchy, you know, like the wind, you can't hear us. Nobody knows who this song is by. So this is a track that was recorded from a German radio station in the early 80s. The song was taped by a young man going by the name of Darius S. off the northern German radio station NDR. He recorded it onto a cassette tape along with other songs by bands like The Cure and Ecstasy. Years later, he pulled out the tape and noticed there was one song he didn't recognize. So he did what anyone does nowadays. He took it to the internet. Surely someone would know where this song came from, but nobody had any idea what this song was. It's become a total cult internet mystery. There have been people who have tried to claim the song belongs to them. One guy posted in a YouTube comment that it was from his band Numb 212. It's never been confirmed, and I honestly don't buy it. Numb 212, that's not the kind of name an 80s new wave band would have had, and there's never been any solid proof that the song belongs to him. All we know is that the singer seems to have a vaguely European accent, possibly German, and we can pick out some of the lyrics. Again, great. This next one is pretty cool. Cicada 3301. It's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside of another mystery on the internet. So it all began back in January of 2012 when this weird puzzle popped up out of nowhere. It was a challenge posted to several online forums across different websites reading, "Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we devised a test. There is a message hidden in this message. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck, 3301. So some brainy users started deciphering this message that then led to more and more crazy complex puzzles. People who took up the challenge found themselves digging into cryptography, steganography, literature, who knows what else. I wish I was smart so I could have uncovered the puzzle and started down like this adventure. Because some folks claimed they had to go on real world like treasure hunts to crack these puzzles. Like they'd get clues leading to the physical locations around the globe. Like very exciting. Of course, nobody knows who's behind Cicada 3301 or what they're up to. Some think it's maybe some kind of recruitment test for like a super secret organization, maybe the CIA or something. Others think that maybe there's something more nefarious and dark going on, but you know, who knows? And we don't even know if anyone completed the entire thing.
Okay guys, go ahead and tell James that he's smart in the comments, come on. Next up we have the mystery of Chip Chan, who is a South Korean woman who first appeared online as a YouTube live streamer and who often slept on said live stream for upwards of 20 hours at a time, and she only ever left her house in disguise. People became fascinated by her strange day-to-day behaviors, and eventually the live streaming evolved into blogging, and that's when things began to get even weirder and quite dark too. Chip Chan claimed that the South Korean police had been mistreating her, and one specific police officer, who she referred to only as Pig or P, had been specifically targeting her and making her life an unbearable living hell. Chip Chan claims that whenever she left her house, the officer would make her unconscious and drag her to an unknown location before implanting a chip into her ankle that she believed to be a mind control device. In another blog post, she shared a picture of her neck covered in bug bites. I mean, like covered. It was pretty gross. And she claimed that the officer, P, had used mind control on the bugs to make them attack her. About 4 years ago, her streams ended, and she made a blog post saying that it was because P had shut her down, but then eventually the blog stopped too. While there are many theories going around regarding the truth about what really happened to Chip Chan, many people believe that she was in fact a paranoid schizophrenic who had refused help. Perhaps she stopped posting after being admitted to a mental hospital, or do you guys think what she was saying is true and maybe the police finally got to her?
Alright, next up we have a mysterious Russian radio station that's been sending out strange signals since the 70s, and people all over the internet have been trying to figure out what the deal is with it for years. The station broadcasts this monotonous buzzing noise interrupted by weird cryptic messages in Russian. Take a listen here. So people have been trying to decode this radio station for years, but they're often just random strings of numbers or disjointed words or names like you just heard. Other than like the intermittent voices cutting into the buzzing, there was also a transmission in 2010 where there was a brief excerpt from Swan Lake, and on the 11th of November of that same year, intermittent phone conversations were transmitted and recorded by a listener. Again, most anyone has been able to like piece together are just random phrases and words. Some think they're coded messages for spies or secret military communications. Until this day though, nobody knows who's behind UVB 76 or why it exists.
Raise your hand if you are the founder of Bitcoin. Now, if you raise your hand, you are either a liar or one of the most mysterious internet icons on Earth. When the cryptocurrency launched back on January 3rd of 2009, it quickly became, I think, the most successful and prominent cryptocurrency known to man. I mean, in 2021, it reached a market value of over $1 trillion US dollars. Do you know what I could do with that amount of money? I could buy a lot of stuff. So, while Bitcoin launched in 2009, it was actually mentioned online a year prior in a paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The paper appeared to be written by someone or something called Satoshi Nakamoto, but no one knows who that is, or who they are, or what they are. It could be one person, a small group, a whole team, or even some kind of like AI generated thing. No one knows. What we do know, however, is that in 2011, Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared after emailing a Bitcoin core developer saying that he had, quote, moved on to better things. Many people have speculated that Australian scientist Craig Wright or BitGold founder Nick Szabo might have been the man or men behind the whole thing, but the truth is, unless you are Satoshi Nakamoto, there's just no way to know, though.
Alright, next up we have the mystery of 112 Dirtbag. Mara Murray was a 21-year-old college student who vanished without a trace in February of 2004 after crashing her car in a rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. She was last seen by witnesses after the accident, but when police arrived on the scene just minutes later, she was gone. Now enter 112 Dirtbag. So Mara's father in an interview dubbed whoever was responsible for his daughter's perceived kidnapping as a, quote, dirtbag. On the 8th anniversary of her vanishing, a chilling YouTube video surfaced on a channel named 112 Dirtbag. In the video, a middle-aged man stares into the camera with this unsettling seriousness before breaking into this maniacal laughter. Then he winks at the camera before the screen goes black and the message, "Happy Anniversary," appears on screen. Not only could the dirtbag part be a reference to the comment Mara's father made, but she'd also gone missing on Route 112. Police were able to trace the man's identity in the video, but there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crime. The question still remains though, was this guy just a troll, exploiting the tragedy for attention, or could he actually have been involved in Mara's disappearance?
And finally we have Ghostnet, an electronic espionage operation that came to light in 2009 that had infiltrated 1,295 computers across 103 countries. The operation had been used to spy on individuals as well as organizations and governments, and it went on for 2 years before it was discovered after an investigation had been launched into a potential breach in the office of the Dalai Lama in India. It was investigators from the University of Toronto, shout out my Canadians, who confirmed the cyber spy attack, and they were also able to trace its origins back to China. It was noted that while the exact source of the espionage was unknown, the acting attackers were likely civilians who had run the operation for either profit or patriotic reasons. Or it was the government acting as private citizens in order to spy on other countries while maintaining plausible deniability for their actions. Who knows, right? I mean, do you know? Because like, if you know, let me know, you know?
At our number 5 spot, we have Amy. On Lick Road, just outside of Cincinnati, a terrible incident is said to have taken place. A woman named Amy lost her life at the hands of someone, but the perpetrator was never found. The prevailing theory is that her boyfriend did it though. As the years passed, tales of Amy's ghost haunting Lick Road began to spread, making the ghost of Amy one of the most prominent urban legends in Ohio. Supposedly, there are a couple ways to experience the ghost of Amy. One legend goes that if you flick your headlights onto the sign as you're turning on to Lick Road at night, you can see the name Amy briefly flash on the sign. Another goes that if you park your car at the cul-de-sac facing the woods, then flash your headlights 3 times, your windows will start to fog up with the word help being written in the condensation. Some nightly visitors have claimed to see the ghostly figure of Amy standing at the edge of the forest. Others claim to hear disembodied footsteps behind them as they make their way across the bridge. Next up, we have Satan's Hollow. In Cincinnati, there is a famous drainage tunnel, a tunnel with a very dark history. Strange and ominous things are said to have happened there. Satanic rituals and disappearances supposedly plague the tunnel, and one story goes that during one of these rituals, a portal to the underworld was accidentally opened. This has led to a number of locals believing this series of interconnected tunnels are actually a portal to hell itself now. People claim to hear strange noises coming from its depths and have even witnessed a shadowy figure known as the Shadow Man, a demonic entity who stalks the tunnel at night. The Werewolf of Defiance. So in the summer of 1972, the small town of Defiance, Ohio was rocked by a series of bizarre and terrifying encounters with what locals would describe as the Werewolf of Defiance. First reported sighting occurred when 2 railroad workers, Ted Davis and Tom Jones, were laboring on the Norfolk and Western Railway. Ted Davis, busy with his work, suddenly looked up to witness something completely unexplainable. A large wolf-like creature clutching a wooden board in its paws. The creature then just whacked Ted on the shoulder with the board before vanishing into the nearby bushes. I like the imagery of that. Just a werewolf come walking out. Bam! Alright, goodbye. Anyway, 5 days later, Ted and Tom returned to work, hoping that the strange encounter was just a one-time event. But unfortunately, they spotted this pesky werewolf again. Luckily, it was much further away this time, and they just booked it out of there. They reported the incident to the local police, and before long, this wave of similar reports flooded in from various parts of Defiance. More and more residents claimed to have encountered a wolf-man-like creature. People were scared to go outside. Like, nobody wants to be gored by a massive-sized wolf person. The sightings, did trail off, but the Wolfman of Defiance has remained a legend of Ohio ever since. And at second place, we have the Crosswick Monster. This incident took place in 1982 and has become a prominent tale in Ohio's cryptid folklore. According to this story, two young boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, encountered a terrifying creature in a field. They heard peculiar noises coming from the tall grass, and before they could react, a massive four-legged lizard-like beast emerged. The creature swiftly approached them, grabbing 13-year-old Ed in its jaws and began dragging him towards a hollowed-out tree. Fortunately, though, the boys' screams caught the attention of three nearby men who rushed in to help. They managed to rescue Ed, but he sustained some pretty severe injuries. In response to this initial attack, a group of 60 men armed themselves with axes and clubs, and I'm imagining torches, and they formed a posse to hunt down this creature. They managed to catch up with it, and at one point it stood up on its hind legs. The chase led them to a hill of rocks where the creature vanished into a hole, never to be seen again. The story was written up in the local paper at the time, and it's since grown to be a staple of Ohio's folklore. Just what the hell was the thing that they saw that day? And finally, at our number one spot, we have the Circleville Writer. The Circleville Letters case, which began in 1976 in Circleville, Ohio. Is it Circleville or Circleville? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, it's still one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries in the state. It all began with these anonymous, threatening letters sent to numerous residents. The letters contained detailed, personal information about the recipients' lives, leading to this fear and paranoia throughout the community. The mysterious writer knew intimate details about the victims' private lives and warned them to cease certain behaviors. One of the primary recipients, Mary Gillespie, was particularly targeted. The sender claimed she had been having an affair, which Mary insisted was not true, and the situation escalated when Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter warning him that he would be unalived. The case took a tragic turn when Ron Gillespie was found dead in his crashed car. His death was ruled an accident, but many suspected foul play. The letters persisted even after Ron's death, leaving the town baffled about the identity of the sender. Several theories emerged, including suspicions about a local school superintendent and Mary's brother-in-law, but no conclusive evidence was ever found, leaving the case unsolved. This incident has inspired numerous legends and conspiracy theories. Stories have spread about the letters having been written by some sort of vengeful ghost or spirit haunting the town, even. The vanishing of Cynthia Anderson. Cynthia Anderson was working as a legal secretary in Toledo, Ohio in 1981. A year before she disappeared, someone had spray painted "I love you, Cindy," signed GW, across from her office window. Cynthia had no idea who this GW was. Things got even more unsettling when it was painted over, but then reappeared in larger letters. Cynthia was planning to leave her job soon to join her boyfriend at a Bible college, and she was ready to leave because she'd also started receiving anonymous, disturbing phone calls at work. Her work even installed an emergency buzzer at her desk, and she kept her office doors locked at all times. On August 4th, Cynthia got to work normally. She was last seen at about 9:45 a.m. But by lunchtime, when her boss arrived, she was gone. The office was still locked from the inside, too. Her car was in the parking lot, but her keys and purse were gone. There were no signs of a struggle. Most chilling was the romance novel she'd been reading was left open on her desk to a scene of the protagonist being abducted at knife point. Her case has never been solved.
At our halfway point today, we have the mystery of the original Diic Box. If you don't know what a Diic Box is, it's a box containing a Diic, which is, in Jewish folklore, an evil spirit that enters and possesses the bodies of the living. And it's also the inspiration behind the movie Possession. The Diic Box first gained popularity after it was posted by its owner on eBay, who claimed to have purchased it from a Jewish World War II survivor who had gotten it while living in Spain. When the owner went to pick it up, the woman's granddaughter told him that growing up the box was always shut and set in high, out-of-reach places, never ever to be opened. The box sold on eBay for $280 to Haxton, who opened it, and inside found a goblet, 2 locks of hair tied with string, pennies, dried rosebud, a cast iron candlestick holder, and a granite statue engraved with Hebrew letters. Soon after opening the box, Haxton experienced a wave of bad luck, which included serious illness. So we spoke to a rabbi who advised him to place the box inside of a gold-lined wooden container. Haxton did as he was told, and then he placed that container into a military-grade safe and buried the safe in the ground. It's safe to say this guy was freaked out. It's impossible to know the truth about what happened to Haxton. I mean, maybe the box was covered in mold, but at the same time, maybe it really does contain a demon. Either way, despite multiple high offers, Haxton refuses to sell the thing. He is keeping it buried underground, and he states that the curse is real, and therefore giving the box to someone even for millions of dollars would be highly unethical.
One of the most compelling cases for the existence of spontaneous human combustion is the sudden death of Mary Reeser. On July 3, 1951, in St. Petersburg, Florida, the landlord of a small apartment building made a pretty horrific discovery. She'd come to Mary Reeser's apartment to deliver a telegram. She found that the apartment doorknob was too hot to touch, and there was soot in the hallway. So she had to get nearby house painters to help her get in, and when they did, they found Mary, or at least what remained of Mary, which wasn't much. In fact, the only thing left of her was a black ashy stain on her armchair, and her foot, almost completely unburned, still sitting inside one of her black slippers. She'd been basically cremated alive, but other tenants hadn't reported a fire. The landlord had only smelt a faint scent of smoke in the wee hours of the morning, and even stranger, the rest of Mary's apartment was pretty unaffected. There were no burn marks on the walls, there were newspapers nearby which were totally intact. Even the chair, aside from the torched remains of the old woman, was totally fine. You could have just vacuumed her up and sold the thing at a garage sale the very next day. So what the hell happened to Mary? Is this a real case of spontaneous human combustion? Some think so. Others think she may have fallen asleep with a lit cigarette, which caught her clothing on fire, and Mary just never woke up.
Next up, we have the mysterious disappearance of flight MH370, a Malaysian Airlines international passenger flight to China that completely vanished on March 8th in 2014. When the plane took off, everything seemed normal until it disappeared from radar after deviating west from its planned flight path, causing it to cross over the Malay Peninsula and the Andaman Sea, never to be seen again. All 227 passengers and 12 crew members were lost, prompting the most expensive missing person search in the history of aviation. Search teams scoured the South China and Andaman Sea, and later, after new information regarding possible flight paths were revealed, the southern Indian Ocean as well. The last communication with the aircraft had been just 38 minutes after the plane left the ground, and at the time everything seemed fine. And so everyone working on this case was baffled as to how Flight 370 could have just disappeared the way it did. In 2015, debris confirmed to have originated from the missing aircraft washed up along the shore of the western Indian Ocean, but the plane itself, nor those on board, were ever recovered. No one knows why, how, or really even if the plane went down that day in March, and as far as I can tell, no one ever will. Next up, we have the very strange death of a very strange man that took place on January 22nd in 1935. That year, a man going by the name of Ronald T Owen checked into a hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. The next morning, he let the maid Mary into the room, which was lit by a single lamp. The drapes were closed, and he watched as she cleaned. Before she left, he told her not to lock the door, saying that he was expecting someone. When When Mary returned later that day with clean towels, she found Owen laying in the bed in the dark, fully clothed, with a note next to him that read, "Dawn, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait." The next morning, when she went to clean the room, the door was locked from the outside, so she figured Owen had gone out, but he hadn't. When the hotel staff opened the door, they found him sitting alone in the dark on his bed. Later that night, 2 men were heard arguing inside the hotel room, and after that, the hotel switchboard operator noticed that Owen's phone was off the hook. A staff member went up to check on him. Owen said come in, but the door was locked again from the outside. Using a passkey, the staff member entered and found Owen alone in the dark, lying naked in his bed. Later that night, the phone went off the receiver again, but this time when staff entered the room, they found Owen on his hands and knees, bound by the phone's cord, with a fractured skull, multiple impalement wounds, and completely covered in BLOOD. Not only that, but the red liquid was everywhere, covering the walls, the floor, the bathtub, and it was even splattered on the ceiling. When Owen was asked who did this to you, he simply said, "No one." He was taken to the hospital where he later died of his injuries. Years later, Owen's true identity was revealed as Armidas Ogletree, but the reason of his death, or who killed him, remains an incredibly perplexing mystery.
Finally, we have the whereabouts of treasure marked on an ancient copper map. So in 1947, a Bedouin goat herder stumbled on the Dead Sea Scrolls in a cave near Jerusalem. Among these ancient texts, one intriguing piece is the Copper Scroll. A copper scroll is a metal sheet inscribed with what looks like a treasure map. Points to hidden gold and silver, but the problem is it's written in a mix of Mishnaitic Hebrew and Greek, and it's filled with words that even experts can't figure out. The scroll lists 63 locations where a whopping total of over 160 tons of treasure might be buried, but the clues are maddeningly vague. There are translations reading about how some is hidden in the quote gutter in the bottom of the tank, or 65 gold bars in the quote cavity of the old house of tribute on the chain platform. What the hell is that in reference to? There are a few guesses about what this treasure could be. Some think it might belong to the residents of Qumran, where the scrolls were found. That would be kinda odd though, because they were thought to be a religious group that didn't really care much for wealth. Another theory suggests the treasure could be valuable items from the destroyed Second Temple of Jerusalem. Some even think though that the scroll could have been an ancient hoax, and that there is and never was any treasure at all. And I hope that's the case, because that is pretty funny.
Next up is the Fort Worth missing trio. Rachel Trickla went down to do some Christmas shopping on the morning of December 23rd, 1974 with her friend Lisa Renee Wilson and Julie Mosley. The girls were supposed to be home by 4 p.m, but they were never seen again. Rachel's car was then found parked outside of Sears, and witnesses said they saw the girls inside the shopping center. Locked inside the car were all the gifts the girls had bought, which made it unlikely that they ran away. Later, a letter was sent to Rachel's husband that read, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we just had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears upper lot. Love, Rachel." Now, besides the other errors in the letter, it looked as if Rachel had misspelt her own name on the first pass, and one of the numbers in the postmark was backwards. Now, despite receiving the letter, the girls' families did not believe that it was written by Rachel, nor that the girls had run away. Now, despite their efforts, no further information about the girls has ever been found.
Next up, we have the mysterious disappearance of D.B. Cooper. On Wednesday, November 25th of 1971, a man going by the name of Daniel Cooper bought himself a one-way ticket from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, and boarded the plane dressed in business attire, holding a briefcase and a brown paper bag. He sat down and prior to takeoff called the flight attendant over to order a drink. After the plane became airborne, he called that very same flight attendant back to his seat and handed her a note. She put it in her pocket, but Daniel urged her to read it, saying, "Miss, you better look at the note. I have an explosive device." He then instructed the woman to sit down next to him and opened his briefcase, revealing red sticks covered in a mass of wires, and asked her to deliver a message to the pilot. Daniel wanted $200,000 in $20 bills, 2 back parachutes, 2 front parachutes, and a fuel truck delivered to him by the time they landed. When the flight reached Seattle, Daniel held all passengers hostage until his demands were met. With certain members of the crew still on board, he demanded workers workers to refuel the plane and set a course for Mexico City. At around 8 p.m. during Daniel's second flight of the day, he leaped from the plane with 2 parachutes and a bag full of money. Despite the FBI's efforts and over 45 years of searching, Daniel's whereabouts remains unknown, and his case remains one of the greatest cold cases in FBI history.
Moving on to Lars Maten. Now this is just a strange case. In July 2014, Lars Maten was on summer break in Bulgaria. Partying on the beach, he got into a fist fight and sustained a ruptured eardrum. He was advised by his doctor to not fly until it healed, so he told his friends to go back to Germany without him. After spending the night in the hostel alone though, he became extremely scared and paranoid. His mother received a panic text from him stating that he didn't feel safe, she should cancel his credit card, and that 4 mysterious men were following him. Now the next day he went to the airport and was seen on surveillance walking through the airport with his luggage. Suddenly he then walks off screen and is then seen sprinting the other direction out of the airport without his bags, jumping over the fence and disappearing into the forest. Now he was never seen again. His family confirmed that he didn't suffer from any mental illness, and they have no idea why he would begin acting in such a bizarre and erratic manner. A massive search was launched to find Lars, but it was unsuccessful. So what happened to him? I guess we'll never know.
Next, we have the disappearance of Tom Young and Keith Reinhard. In 1987, Tom Young was renting a retail space in Silver Plume, Colorado. One day, he went for a walk with his dog Gus and never returned. The retail space was later rented to Keith Reinhard, who became encapsulated with the story of Young. So much so, in fact, that he began writing a novel in which the main character was a combination of himself and the missing man. Eventually, in 1988, Tom Young's body was found with a weapon by local hunters who had been patrolling the mountains nearby. Both Young and his dog had head injuries caused by a handheld weapon. Originally, it was speculated that Young had taken his own life, as it was revealed that the weapon next to him was one that he had purchased only a few days prior to his disappearance. But reports showed that the projectiles used did not match ones compatible with Young's weapon. Locals also maintained that Young loved his dog, and even if he had intended to end his own life, he would have never done anything to harm Gus. Upon hearing this news, Keith decided to go out and explore the area in which Young had been found, and he left for the mountains around 4:30 p.m. He was never seen again. Despite multiple search and investigation efforts, neither Reinhard's body nor Young's killer were ever found. Was it a coincidence, or was there perhaps something far more sinister taking place in the mountains of Colorado?
Now we have Susan Powell. Susan Powell was last seen on December 6, 2009. At first, relatives reported the entire Powell family missing on December 7th, as Susan did not show up to work that day, and her purse, wallet, and identification were all found inside the house. Now later that day, her husband Joshua returned home with her 2 sons. He claimed he had left Susan sleeping at home shortly after midnight on December 7th and had taken his boys on a camping trip, which, let me just say, doesn't really make any sense. Now upon searching the Powell residence on December 9th, investigators found traces of Susan's blood on the floor, and at the bank in which she worked, inside a safe deposit box that belonged to her, investigators discovered a handwritten will and testament. In the will, Susan had written about how bad her marriage became, and that Joshua had taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on her. If I die, her note said, it may not be an accident. Now at the time of her disappearance, Susan's close friends said her marriage had been rocky for years, and that she had even seen a divorce lawyer. Now Joshua was a suspect but was never charged with anything, and then in February 2012, Josh ended his own life along with his 2 sons in a house explosion during a supervised visit. Now since then, Susan's case has run cold.
And finally, we have James Tetford, who disappeared in Bennington, Vermont in 1949 after a string of disappearances, including that of James's wife, who went to the market and never returned, took place in the area during the 1940s and 50s, leaving many natives to believe the area, dubbed the Vermont Triangle, to be cursed. Also among the missing was Maddie Rivers, an experienced hiking guide who disappeared in 1945 while leading a group of hunters into the mountain. Later, in 1946, a college student disappeared walking along the long trail. In 1950, the city saw the disappearance of young man Paul Jepson, and not long after, Frida Langer vanished in the mountains. While Frida's body was discovered a year later, the cause of death was never determined. The disappearance of James was no less perplexing than the rest, as on the day of his disappearance, James boarded a bus to Bennington with 14 other passengers who all remember seeing the man asleep in his seat. However, when the bus arrived at Bennington, after having made no stops along the way, James Tetford's luggage was still on board, but James himself himself was nowhere to be found.
Next, we have the mysterious death of Robert Wan. So this is a very, very strange case. So on the night of August 2nd of 2006, Wan, who is a lawyer, was staying at the home of three friends, Joseph Prince, Victor Zaborski, and Dylan Ward, in Washington, D.C. That night, he was supposed to sleep in a guest room, but he was found dead in the room from stab wounds. The three housemates called the police, claiming that an unknown intruder must have entered the house, but investigators found little evidence of any forced entry, and even stranger, there were no signs of a struggle, like as if one hadn't tried to defend himself at all. This meant he was likely incapacitated with a paralyzing agent before being stabbed. The other strange part was the lack of blood. There was none. There wasn't even any coming out of his wounds. It was such an oddly clean crime scene. Suspicion fell on Price, Zaborski, and Ward. They were later charged with obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence, as it seemed they were not fully cooperating with the investigation. And during the trial, the defense maintained their innocence, though, arguing that Wan's death was indeed caused by some unknown intruder. In 2010, the three housemates were acquitted of the criminal charges. The judge noted that the prosecution had failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, that's a pretty infuriating way for the case to end, because obviously these three housemates had something to do with Wan's death. But what was the motive? That's the question. All right, the Brandon Swanson case. This is yet again a completely baffling case. In southwestern Minnesota in May of 2008, Brandon Swanson, a college student, suddenly went missing. On the night of May 14th, Brandon was driving home from a party. At some point he got lost and then got his car stuck in a ditch. He phoned up his father trying to give him his whereabouts. His parents drove to his whereabouts and tried flashing their headlights, but Brandon said he didn't see them. So he told his dad, you know what, I'm just gonna walk to a nearby town to get some help. He could see lights in the distance that he believed was the nearby town of Lind. Dad then stayed on the phone with him as he walked towards the town. At some point during the call though, Brandon suddenly exclaimed, "Oh sh," and then went silent. They tried to call Brandon again, thinking the call had just disconnected, but they couldn't reach him. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. The case of Lori Deppes. Lori Deppes, a 20-year-old woman, disappeared on August 19th of 1992 from Menasha, Wisconsin. On the night of her disappearance, Lori had been working at a local photography studio and was last seen leaving her shift. She had plans to meet her boyfriend at his apartment later that evening, but never arrived. Well, she'd made it into the parking lot, but never physically into the building. People inside the apartment heard her drive up, they heard her car door shut, but that was it. She never came in. Her car was found in the parking lot of the apartment complex. A styrofoam cup of soda was on top of it, but no sign of Lori. And she's never been found. I can't imagine how completely devastating this would be and confusing, just awful. We always think of, you know, if my loved one is, heaven forbid, goes missing, they'll probably be when I'm not around. They'll probably be somewhere off alone. But the fact that she was right there outside the apartment, like car in the parking lot, they heard her getting out of the car and then just poof, gone. It has to be absolutely maddening. Finally though, we have the infamous Yuba County 5 case. This is one of the most mysterious cases in the United States. 5 young men in Yuba County, California disappeared in 1978. Theodore Weir, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Matthias were a group of friends, all with intellectual disabilities of some kind. They disappeared after attending a college basketball game. After the game, the men were last seen at a convenience store. They had plans to return home to Yuba County, but they never made it back. Their abandoned car was later found in a remote and mountainous area called Plumas National Forest. The car was stuck in the snow and there was no sign of the men. It was determined that they'd walked away from the car, even though the weather was very harsh. In June of 1978, there was finally a breakthrough in the case. The remains of Ted were discovered in a trailer about 19 miles from where the car had been found. There was food and supplies in the trailer, where it had seemingly died of starvation and exposure. This was very odd because the trailer was stocked with enough food to keep all 5 men alive for quite a while, and there was stuff there to make fire and everything, but none of that had been used. Then Jack and Bill were found the following day, about 11 miles from the car, and all that was left of Bill were bones, and Jack looked to have been partially eaten by an animal. Jackie's remains were found 2 days later, and as for Gary, he was never found. So what went on here? Why did they leave so far from the car and try and stay in this trailer? Why didn't they eat the food that was there? We'll likely never know. Next up on the list, we have the February UAP sightings. A lot of you probably remember this string of weird incidents, but for those who aren't familiar, the story here is that several mysterious high-altitude objects were shot down in February of 2023 over various airspaces. We had objects being spotted over Canada, United States, Latin America, China, and Eastern Europe. It started when several unidentified objects were shot down over Alaska, the Yukon, and Lake Huron. The general of NORAD, Glenn D. Van Herk, made a statement at the time saying the objects could be benign, but he wasn't 100% sure. And when asked if they could be of alien origin, he said he just wasn't ruling anything out. It really seems like the government and military, especially like over the course of this year, has just become more open about this stuff. The idea of extraterrestrial life existing, which is really interesting. Either way though, it seems like it's just being discussed more. It's not written off as total nonsense like it used to be more so in the past. Now, here's another interesting part about these cases. There were recovery attempts made. Unfortunately, the objects landed in areas that aren't all that accessible, so it may be pretty difficult to actually recover these objects, and till this point, we still don't know what they are, and I think the search has been given up entirely. But, I mean, you know, they could have found something and then just not said what it is, you know? There's always the chance that that's the case. And at number 4, we have the UAP Landing. This piece of footage was apparently recorded in a rural area of Colombia. So we see this nice landscape view of the rainforest. We see trees, we hear birds. That's all normal, but oh wait, what's that in the sky? It's definitely not a bird or any living animal, at least that we know of. There's no wings flapping, first off. Plus, that would be a massive sized bird if it was one. No, it looks to be an object of some kind. You realize it's not actually flying towards the camera, but slowly descending. We watch as it disappears into the tree line. So what could this object be? I'm not a drone expert, so if you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that were a drone, it would have to be pretty big, right? The object is far off in the distance, but we see it pretty clearly. If it is a drone, it's definitely not some kid's toy. Now, this next piece of footage was taken years ago, but it wasn't actually shared online until about 5 months back by Reddit user CuriousAD5774. They said the footage was taken by a friend of their father's out in the country in Ontario. In the clip, we see the guy pointing the camera towards the night sky, where we see an object with glowing lights floating there. At first I thought it was maybe just a satellite, but the guy says the object is just hovering in place. Kind of hard to tell because he's not holding the camera very steadily. Now, looking at this footage, it's also easy to think, you know, what we're seeing is just a drone, but let me read what the Redditor wrote along with the clip. Don't got much to say about this video other than when my dad originally sent it to me, I felt like it had to be a UFO. And there's nothing else that seemed to explain it. Canada is notorious for sightings, and I myself have seen a few. This was taken way before drones were being used regularly. I'd say this video is easily 10 years old. At our number 2 spot, we have the Colorado Bigfoot. I don't think I was going to get through a whole list of weird, mysterious footage without bringing up Bigfoot at least once. 2023 was a pretty quiet year for Bigfoot sightings, at least ones captured on camera. But this next clip really made the rounds. It was being shared everywhere. It was all over the news. Even Stephen Colbert did a bit on it. So a couple were on a train passing through southern Colorado when they spotted something hiking across the hills in the distance. It looked to be a large furry biped. You hear a lot of people talking in the clip, obviously shocked and confused by what they're looking at. The creature walks across the grass and then kind of like just squats down, watching the train as it passes. Now, I gotta say, for all the supposed Sasquatch footage I've seen, and I've seen a lot, this one is not the most convincing. This could easily be a prankster in a costume, but you know what? I'm entertained by the whole thing. You know, it looks hot. He had to go out there in that big furry suit. He's in the middle of nowhere, you know? I don't know. I commend him. I think that's a commitment to a joke. Finally, though, we have the flying saucer. And I say flying saucer not just because I've exhausted pretty much every other way of saying UFO on this list, but also because this object really does look like your classic flying saucer. So the clip was taken by a pilot. They've already started filming before we actually see anything, so it looks as if they spotted something and then pulled their camera out hoping to see it again. Then they focus on one area of the sky, and we see this dot appear and then rapidly get larger, realizing that there's an object hurtling in the direction of the plane before whizzing by at an incredible speed. And slowing the clip down, the object clearly fits the description of that stereotypical alien spacecraft, the most commonly reported type. I really like this video because it's not often you see UFO footage taken in the air, you know, actually getting to see the object pretty close up, just whizzing by at the same vantage point. Could the clip be fake? For sure, but it could be genuine too. It's really hard to say with stuff like this because it's not illogical to think that there could be extraterrestrial life out there. And with all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about mysterious creatures that defy explanation. Scientists are working tirelessly to find out what these creatures are. Hopefully we can get more information as time goes, but watch the video for yourself to see these animals firsthand. What are you waiting for? Click the video now.